philosophical discussion that we kind of have, noted, especially in 2023, where there has been a lot of milestone, a lot of historical decisions in terms of climate mitigation and climate action. So the first thing that we would like to analyze is like what were the certain specific goals that was previously established that kind of brought towards the highlight of COP28. For instance, the COP26 Glasgow Conference on 2021 was one such COP which initiated the phase out of carbon emissions, which we find in the reports that we see today. So to begin with, let's start analyzing the previous set of goals that led towards the COP. Jayant, you
Sharon, you're
can
breaking.
go ahead.
Sharon, I was not able to hear you.
Yeah, maybe we would like to start trying to unpack and analyze how the previous set goals, initial goals that we see today in COP28. So, what are your thoughts about the same?
Are you asking about the goal set in COP26 or 28?
So there has been many COP that took place beforehand. So what are the certain decisions that we see in the COP today? Like what are the reflections?
Okay. So, I mean, COP28 is sort of a juncture point for the major decisions, especially, at least for me, climate finance was the major part of the climate change mitigation effort, which was initiated in the Glasgow COP. And right now, the loss and damage fund was established and it was sanctioned finally. So that was a major thing. And the phase down, which like phase out was initially suggested, but the delegates agreed on phase down essentially, where in which India was also a major part. So that happened, and there were certain other assertions by especially the Alliance of the Island Nation States, wherein they were extremely vocal about their conditions, and they were in this COP as well. So there, if we do a comparison, their sort of demands were not met, if we would like to call that, and they were not satisfied with the outcomes of this one as well. So these three things, I believe, were major part, according to me.
Right. And Chika, what are your thoughts about?
Hi. Yes, so this time I think, of course, including what Jayendra said about finally they have made a decision on climate financing. And but what matters is the quality of finance that of also developing nations and developed nations bring to the table. The second would be the that how all the nations this time have come to agreement uh, of removing the of changing the energy system and expelling all the coal emissions that were generated by 2050. And certain actions have also been discussed about gas and oil and their reduction by 60% in by 2050. So I think these two are a major takeaways from COP28 about climate financing and changing energy patterns, like which have been very dominant up to until this movement. And I think these two can lead to greater efficiency and more stabilization of sustainability for the future. Yes.
Also, global stock take is a major part, which was essentially to check up on all the progress which has been made throughout the years of climate mitigation since the Paris Agreement was signed. So the global stock take is supposed to happen this year after the COP, and essentially it will be the way we will sort of take it forward now, since it will be a kind of a report card for all of the countries. So that is one of the most important things. If it is done well, then we'll have a better way forward.
Also, it was initially mentioned in the Paris Agreement as well about the GST comprehensive assessment to be rightly implemented. And that is one of the greatest milestones that we can see. Throughout.
Sharon, your voice is breaking too much, I guess. I think you should change your data source. It's not coming out well.
Am I audible now?
You're audible.
All right. So one of the, again, another milestone that we kind of notice is that all the countries were agreeing to the global temperature to maintain 1.5 degrees Celsius. And it's the same, also we heard Sultan Al-Jaber mentioning that there is no signs to suggest that phase out of fossil fuels is necessary to restrict global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is about the pre-industrial temperature. And today, as the COP28 discussion has come to a conclusion, we also notice the phase down of coal being one of the most, noticeable report that COP28 has brought. What are the some of the reflections that you would like to mention? James.
I mean, firstly, since Sultan Al Jaber has gotten a lot of flack for what he said, but if we look at it in the context of where he's situated, it's the Middle East, and their entire economy is not sort of, but entirely dependent on fossil fuels. So it was bound to happen that if you are arranging this kind of event, you would essentially not put forward an agenda which would essentially destroy your economy in a way or in a lot of ways. So that was expected out of him. However, the phase down of coal part, even though his statement was controversial, the phase down of coal is something which, although it has not been said before, but it is still phase down, not phase out. So that is still a contentious thing that has been in place. So yes. Sharon, you're on mute.
And also, phase down is also a notice, report strongly resisted by India, China, and countries like South Africa as well, considering its, the upliftment and all. So, yeah. And Richie, any thoughts about the same?
Yeah, so although they have said that and agreed on that coal needs to be phased out by 2050, and the comment made by the speaker have been very controversial, yes, and he has received a lot of criticism even at the event of COP. And he have also mentioned that how phasing out is inevitable and all that. Yeah, so I think developing nations and including the Middle East have been dependent on and have been the larger exporters of oil themselves. Um, it is it is crucial, and but it is also very much of a contested area to work upon, given that the transition to renewable energy have been very slow in developing nations, and it will take a good amount of decades to completely transfer and then phasing out at the same time. So yeah, that's
Similarly, another report was also based on cutting down emissions as well. And I also, for instance, India as a developing country is
Your voice is not clear at all. It's breaking.
I'm sorry about that. Am I better? Is it better now?
Yep.
Okay. So along with the phase down of coal, we were also able to witness the methane emission cuts as well, in which countries like India, developing country like India, has to kind of tweak its agricultural pattern in general due to the reduction of, in order to facilitate the reduction of methane emission as well. So definitely this kind of development can vary from place to place again. And we've been trying to develop a framework where, the countries together on a global aspect try to bring in these changes. But something that has been lacking is like how does countries on an individual level try to attain the same and try to bring these into their legal framework? Or what are those thoughts?
You mean individual contributions by nations, Sharon?
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one something that we would like to discuss, like how the sense of development again changes from place to place and from geographical entities to geographical entity, because the framework is kind of constructed on a global perspective, but when it comes to each and every country, there is no specific agenda, like how does each country approach the same. And climate crisis in itself is a global crisis. So to tackle the same is also a challenge in itself. So what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, the nature of these events, essentially the NDCs which are made, right, nationally determined contributions, those were the sort of that was a solution actually for this problem that you're describing, wherein different nations face different problems, right, and they are at a different stage of development in their own journey, whatever they've faced in the past. So by establishing the NDC framework, they were able to have their own pathways, create their own targets, but at the same time, it was not legally binding per se. So even though countries were asked to create those, and a lot of them did, the major thing which came out was that a lot of the NDCs were not being able to met. Countries were not doing it in a manner which the UN would want them to. So the NDCs were kind of a solution. I believe it did give countries like India their freedom to do whatever they want. But yeah, that was the framework, and I don't know which else way it could have gone. So that is something which we'll have to discuss.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So I understand that the targets that have been set at COP are very overarchingly based as mutually decided and agreed and even contested by developing nations and even developed nations. I think 2 points that seem that have received sort of criticism, that how they have said that we would replenish the green climate, the climate fund. But then the question is that how much and how will it attain that? So how much will a country contribute to that fund? especially when it comes to a developing nation. So that is not very clear when it comes to COP targets, right? And the second that is being said was about the reduction of gas and oil by 60%, by 60% at the end of 2050, but then a reduction then, but who will have the access to use it? Who will be dominating the use of those oil and gas? Because US have a lot of the US is also one of the exporters of gas and oil, and so will the again the huge chunk of using of these energy sources will lie to say US or then Middle East. So who is exactly legible or who is legitimized to use such kinds of sources resources is also very much lacking in and has received criticism in COP28, which sort of brings that somewhere along the line developing nations and their perspective gets missing in the larger objective that COP has set and targeted.
Right. Similarly, we've also seen that the concept of tripling renewable energy is one initiative that the COP28 agreement is calling upon, in which we try to triple, the energy efficiency and capacity of renewable energy, at the same time doubling the annual input in energy efficiency as well. So the agenda that they try to sort out by doing same is to avoid the potential of car emissions of emissions like about 7 billion tons of dioxide, which is prolonging from 2023 to 2030. So this initiative, what kind of scholarship do you think we can approach with?
Will you repeat the last part? I was not able to understand what you meant by it.
Right. So the tripling of renewable energy is another milestone report that the COP28 calls upon, where we sought to triple the usage of renewable energy at the same time doubling the energy efficiency, which brings down or tries to avoid approximately the emission of carbon dioxide, like 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide from 2023 to 2030. So what are the scholarship that one can try to approach in this report, especially when there's a gap between the global south and global north?
Okay. I mean, first of all, what one needs to understand is that even using these terms, energy efficiency and tripling down of renewable energy, all of those are kind of blanket statements which will need unpacking. And I've not gone through the entire report, but I know that some countries have been trying to, at least the Scandinavian countries have been trying to increase their energy efficiency in the way that they are producing more and more by using less resources. But that is for the Scandinavian countries because they have the resource to do it. When it comes to global south, the entire agenda is that they don't have the resources, they don't have the money, and they don't have the institutional capacity to increase their efficiency when their own institutions are not able to function at their utmost efficiency. So while saying that, tripling down on renewable energy is a good way to go about it, which essentially a lot of the countries will be doing by using different kinds of energies, such as India is doing with the solar energy. But the question we need to ask is at what point in their journey are these countries where they will be able to have this sort of efficiency when they are not able to firstly utilize the funds by climate finance, which are already meager, and then also create an ecosystem wherein all of these efficiency and also the increase will happen. So this is a rather ambitious target in my opinion, and they will not they but the countries will have to determine on their own how they go about it. And I believe if there is not a very structural approach to keep in check the different developments in various countries, it'll be difficult to manage this sort of goal.
Right. I also think that the climate financing framework is also a pivotal tool that contributes towards the building a bridge between both the global south and global north. Furthermore, we can also notice that from a sociological standpoint, that we witness massive amount of and social
Karan, audio
movement
is
by
breaking.
sociology. Am I audible now? Right. So COP28 also witnessed various kinds of activism and movements during the course of its meeting as well. There was movements, there were protests, there were youth-based campaigns as well. From a sociological point of view, could you share some thoughts about, some reflections about this kind of social movements and how does that enhance climate activism in the contemporary epoch?
I mean, these kinds of activism, you can say, or protests or demonstrations have been happening in different, not just COPs, but different meetings or conglomerations of different kinds related to climate, or even the WTO meetings and all. And there are two sides to it. One is wherein at least we are happy, the younger generation is getting into, deciding their own future and moving forward, being vocal about, and creating more accountability their ancestors. But the other side of that is that a lot of the times this kind of demonstration which happens in different meetings, for example, if you look at the little girl that went onto the stage during one of the demonstrations, during one of the meetings, and she was asking for help in Manipur and different regions of India. I believe she was from Manipur. If you look at the reaction towards that, it has been a mixed bag, simply because a lot of people believe after Greta Thunberg that it's sort of fashionable to talk about it, and so a lot of people are saying that, oh, their rich parents brought them to this place and then they did that instead of actually going out and doing something. So there is that side to that. But we should look at it in a way wherein how many people it is influencing and what they're getting out of it. In any kind of demonstration, there will be people who will be against it. But essentially, what happens is somebody will see it, be it a younger person or an older person. They might be intrigued by it. We don't know their reaction, but they will at least have something to think about it. So, in that sense, it's a good thing. But activism also needs to be substantial in the way that it is also well thought, and it should not be cheap sense. It should be accessible as well as helping people realize what is at stake. So if it's not doing that, then it's not going to be that helpful. It will only get trolled on social media mostly.
Right. Ruchika, what are your thoughts about the activism of the movements that took place during the COP and in an overarching aspect as well?
Yeah, right. So, activism, of course, play a very important role in not just to see that the public is aware of what these meetings also say, and to spread awareness about sustainability and climate change, and what does it mean that to maintain 1.5 degrees Celsius? Why are everybody preaching and emphasizing on it? So, indeed, activism sort of opens dialogue and creates sort of a critical space in which people, including young generation, can be a part of the dialogue. The responsibility of climate change is shared not just by uh, policymakers, but us as an individuals and us as a citizen of either the developed and developing nations. And so we see the activism that we saw in during the COP meeting is very symbolic in its own nature, that it opens up the possibility to see future and people that are concerned about the future, right? So once the voices that we see coming from below would push for more such policies to move further, and policies to protect the nature further in more sustainable manner. Yeah, that's it.
So before coming to a conclusion, let's just discuss a little bit about some of the connections and nexus between the decisions that took place during the G20 and how India and where India stands today, especially after the G20 discussion, in once the COP28 has also come to a halt.
Could you repeat the last part, Sharon? Just the last part.
So yeah, so today let's just discuss a little bit like how and where India stands, especially after COP28. The fact that it also conducted the G20 summit as well. So, yeah.
I mean, you will see, of course, a parallel between both of the summits. G20 is also a geopolitical summit, but if you only look at the climate goals, India's own NDCs out into the global arena as well, wherein they were asking for more, work from the developed nations and all of that. But I believe one key thing which happened was India's establishment of its carbon markets, and India asserted in the COP as well that they should focus more on creating a better ecosystem for such markets to come. So there was also like different agendas such as global warming, greenhouse gases, forest protection. All of those were set up during the G20 as well as the COP as well. So yeah, there are parallels, and they just translate into the global arena as soon as they are put in West.
Chika?
Yeah, indeed, G20 and COP that now have concluded have some overlapping agendas that we see in terms of maintaining the finance, and how G20 have seen good sort of partnership emerging through with India and other developing nations as well, to sort of come together in this fight for to mitigate the effects that we see. Of course, we cannot stop climate, cannot stop, but of course mitigate the effects of it being uh, hampering the social ecological conditions. So all we can do is to is to sort of postpone the effects of it, and these two summits have been targeting a lot towards that by, of course, bringing in the conversation, and of course, dialogue becomes a very crucial part in these summits to listen and to criticize, and also come to a conclusion and agreement among nations to stand together on such topic which is as sensitive that it can affect the world altogether. So I think both of the summits have very overlapping about the climate change and the ways to mitigate it and bring about energy efficiency by a targeted year. And so, yeah.
I think we only have 2 minutes left, Sharon, the meeting.
So I think its network is as well.
Sorry, I just lost
I
in
think we can
between.
conclude the discussion here, a little short on time.
Right.